So what I'd like to present now is I have it from the viewpoint of the admissions committee, how to prepare. One of the big issues is there's what you think the admissions committee is doing, and there's what transpires behind those closed doors. And that's why I always tell students, how would you like to know what goes on behind those doors? And of course everybody says yes, and I said, well, I'm here to tell you. Okay, this is why we want to separate fact from myth about what that is. So many, many years ago, I realized that when some students think about admissions to professional school, they think it in terms of a to-do list. So they know, well, I know I have to get a high GPA, I know there's going to be an admissions exam, maybe possibly do research, and then everybody says shadow, volunteer, and then you need letters of recommendation. And it's kind of like thinking of it like a shopping list or a grocery list. I call it the did that syndrome. I did that, I did that, I did that, and you think if you get all the boxes checked that now you should get admitted. Well, that's insufficient information. And you can see here I've got shadow and volunteer in quotations, and I try very, very hard to avoid the use of those words because they're just sound bites and they're so poorly descriptive of what the admissions committee is actually looking for. Okay? And I'll give you some more stories about that as well. So I'm not going to, yes, you can shadow clinical observation. Yes, you can volunteer, but what is the fuller description of what the admissions committee is looking for in this case? So instead, I call these experience in medical health-related settings. It may be a clinic, it may be a hospital, it may be a free clinic, lots of things. And then instead of volunteer, I'll tell you why, but I'm going to call that giving back. And I want to know how big is the heart within your chest, okay? I'll also be sending you some of these slides, okay, the pertinent ones. So I want to elaborate on that now. So what does the admissions committee receive, and then how do they actually review that? And this is why on the myths I was talking about is one of the things of a choice of a major. And students have the impression that there is a favorite major. And you just have to figure out what the admissions committee is thinking, and that is going to somehow improve the probability of your being admitted into your chosen profession. So this is from 2010 from the medical school here at the University of Wisconsin, and it's undergraduate majors of the people who were admitted, okay? So about 58% of the students, yeah, they happen to be in the biological sciences, but that could have been biology, molecular biology, genetics, a lot of different biomedical engineering, lots of other things. About 12% in the physical science, but you can see that 28% of the class come from other professions. So clearly, not everybody is supposed to be, or not supposed to be, a biology major. This is from 2013. This is from our most recent class. And you can see that it shifts a little bit, 64% in biological sciences, about 30% in other. But this is to dissuade you from the idea that there's a right major and that there's a wrong major, because there's not. So if you look in what is this other category, it's kind of interesting. Look at all the fields that people come from when, in this case, when they come to the practice of medicine. Accounting, business, econ, English. Yes, you can do humanities, foreign language, history, law, math, natural sciences, poli-sci, social sciences, fantastic. We couldn't possibly have too much social science in the health professions. So many, many different majors that a student might have. Now, one of the misconceptions of students is that if I majored in the humanities, that somehow it's kind of unspoken, but that the standard is different. Like, you're going to let me off the hook for some of that knowledge of science because, after all, I was a history major or I was women's studies. No, we love the majors. We love the diversity of the class that all of those majors bring, but you're all going to have to know a lot of science and math. And it's not just the minimum. When you look and it says 2 semesters with lab of biology, is that the minimum for them to even consider an application? Yes. Is that what you need to be competitive? Absolutely not. Okay? So I want to talk some more about that. And it's so easy to kind of get trapped at the place that you are right now and think, well, what do I have to do to get in? What do I have to do to get in? And I'll tell you, when it comes to writing too, sometimes students say, well, I just want to get admitted. No, you want to get admitted, you want to go to medical school, and you want to be a physician. So think of the long view when you talk to us, and not just getting admitted, okay? So there's how much biology you need to know to get admitted, but there's actually how much you need to graduate into practice. You're always going to have to know this more science, continuing ed, okay? So you don't want to think in terms of the minimum. And I can tell you here, so here it's the required coursework won't necessarily be enough. I see students, I saw 2 this week, okay, who were going through their sophomore year and they figured, okay, 4 semesters, I've taken general chemistry, I've got OChem, they took physics and advanced placement or something, and they wanted to take the medical college admission test right now. And the student's attitude is, boy, I ought to take it right away before I forget all this. And my attitude is, wait, because you're not going to apply yet, and you're going to learn so much more, and that's going to contribute to even higher scores on your admission test. So it's 2 different perspectives, but that is definitely mine. So, and again, what you pick for a major is never going to be irrelevant. One of the things that students tend to do sometimes too is they plan by semester. 1 semester, then the 2nd semester, and sometimes the professors let you get away with that instead of having a long-term kind of view at it. So I always say, in the best of all worlds, you'll have a plan A and a plan B. And students kind of get stuck in the health professions, and I send a notice out to my class. I want to know who's taking my course. And I say, what's your major and what is your planned profession? And I'm thinking a little globally, and they'll put down plan A, orthopedic surgeon. Plan B, brain surgeon. No, I'm suggesting you think a little broader than that. A plan A is if you end up in dental school, if you end up as a PA, but what would you also be very happy and fulfilled doing if you didn't go to medical school? Plan in parallel, okay? Instead of getting to a point and saying, well, maybe I'm not going to go into this profession, and feeling like you have to start over. So as much as you can, you want to have a plan A and a plan B. And if your A and B are both to be surgeons, then you need a plan C, because you need to step back and get a little distance here and think about what else you might want to do. I travel a lot in the fall and do a lot of recruiting for graduate programs, and I found this in an airport. And I thought it was just priceless. Life is all about how you handle plan B, right? So rather than being blindsided, rather than being, saying, oh my God, what do I do now to start over? And that, think about your plan B, and this is exactly where your major is relevant. I've had students who say, I'm majoring in nutrition, and I'm trying to get at the plan B. And I say, okay, so if you were not a dentist, you would like to be a nutritionist? Oh, no. It's like, this is just what I'm taking to get the degree. What do you love? What do you want to do? Absolutely, that major matters, okay? And especially when the professional schools permit such range. So it's what you have heart about. It's what you want to do. So we can say, like I said, any major, let's talk about it, that's fine. Your choice of coursework and the timing of the coursework is what I want to talk about next. And in your choice of coursework, again, you can go to a web page and see what the minimum is to take. But what I want to focus on is what else do you need to take in order to be competitive? And then the timing of that. And I'll show you what the timing is here in just a second too. So what you're doing is you're talking about, you want to plan, you've taken your introductory courses, that's a giveaway, you know that. So, but what are your intermediate and your advanced level courses going to be? When are you going to take those courses in relationship to the admissions exam? I have a PhD in human anatomy. I love it. I have lots of undergrads who think, I want to take anatomy. I want to take, you got time, do it. I want to take anatomy as an undergrad, and they think because it's going to give them a one-up when they get into professional school, or it's going to help them with all that Latin terminology. And I tell them, believe me, when we get you in school, we're going to teach you anatomy the way we want it taught. But the thing of it is there is not going to be any anatomy on the medical college admission test. And there's not going to be any anatomy on the dental admission test. So if you're going to take anatomy, go ahead and enjoy it, but take it as a senior and take the courses that you really need for the admission test first, okay? And you want to get advice about that. Plan for your electives, plan to conduct independent research or study abroad, whatever you want. I want to go back and make at this point again, but one of the things, we see your transcripts, we see everything that you have taken, and you may think you have to double major and you may have to do a certificate, but we look at your transcript with a great amount of time and detail. So if you took several courses in something but it was not a certificate, or you took a number of Spanish courses but you didn't take, the literature part of it or whatever, we still see that you took a lot of courses in that area. And when you write about it, you say, you didn't do a minor or you didn't have a second major, but you took an emphasis in psychology. That's the key word, emphasis, okay? And we see that. So even if you don't double major, we can see what you've taken, and it's how you write about it. It's how you sell yourself, okay? Big point there. Okay, so if you come to see me, I am pretty insistent that we basically work on a 4-year plan, or at least be aware that a 4-year plan is needed. So as a freshman, what can I say to everybody is don't even think about taking 18 credits, okay? Don't overload yourself. Your job your freshman year is to get your feet on the ground, get acclimated, and get your grade point where you want it, so that you could then maintain that grade point and not start from a position where you feel like you're struggling. It is not your job your freshman year to do everything that you're going to need for the rest of your career. So acclimate, and I have students say, oh, well, I grew up in Madison, and I went to this high school, and I know the place. I don't care if you were born here and you lived on street stage your entire life, and that you're going to undergo culture shock when you go to college. And you'll undergo culture shock when you get into dental school and PA and medical school too. So don't underestimate that. You get to your sophomore year. One of the things students do, and it's sometimes because of inadequate advising, but they think, well, I'm a freshman, I really don't know what I want to do, so I'll just take all those electives and get them out of the way. Well, the problem with that is that then you got all your sciences 3 deep. Okay, so what you want to do here is sprinkle your electives throughout your schedule so that you don't end up taking 3 science and math courses at a time. Some students do. If you've got a great grade point, if you walk on water, you can go ahead and do that. But you don't take science and math courses 3 at a time unless your grade point's where you want it. Okay? You do not stack the deck against yourself. Okay? And here I say, make sure your grade point is where you want it. The other thing, too, is make sure that you take intermediate courses. And I'll give you an example on the next one to give you breadth. So what is breadth? What is breadth in biology? Well, it's more than two introductory lectures and labs. And I'll just go to the junior here. Research is not required. It's wonderful. I'll tell you why. Definitely working research in, getting an A, getting a great letter of recommendation, being able to talk about that research. You're probably going to take an admissions test here in the spring. You're going to be applying in the summer. So what have you done up to this point that you can write about in your personal statement? Sometimes we always have allowances. Say there's something you can't squeeze in until your senior year. Then I tell students what you do is you write forward. You write and you say, I will be working with Dr. Duello in the fall. We're going to be working on this project, da-da-da-da-da. You let them know that you're going to be doing research. And then, don't tell everybody on admissions committees this, what you do is you put in your application, and they previewed it, and then they ask you for a secondary application, and they have a file with your name on it. And then you just drop them a nice letter and say, I want you to know that about the work that I'm doing with Dr. Duello. So you kind of squeeze in a few more. Other people, admissions committee people would say, don't write us tons of letters. This is your future. Sell yourself, okay? And then the thing of it is here oftentimes people will keep a lighter load in the spring because they're planning on studying for the admission tests. And then you're going to be busy here too, because you're going to get the secondary applications, and there are going to be some more essays in that. And anybody who's gone through graduate school, the health professions will tell you it's like taking another 5-credit course almost to do all these essays and get all of these applications in. So this is one of the points that I want to make about our course system. And here at Wisconsin, we number our courses, and that's just not a casual thing. The 100 and 200 are introductory, the 3 and 4 are intermediate, and the advanced are the 5 and the 6. And medical school is at 7. So if you've taken a lot of 100, 200, 300, 400 level courses and you've gotten A's, we congratulate you, but we're going to wonder whether you can shift from 400 level work to 700 level work. So you want to have advanced coursework in here, because if you can do 5 and 6, we know you can transition to 7. I learn so much from your questions. I learn so much every time I speak. And as I say, I'm a storyteller too. I had a young man walk into my office a couple of years ago, about this time of year, and he had taken an admissions test, and he had done it excellent in physical sciences, the writing, the verbal reasoning, and his biology was really, really low. And I said, okay, this is going to be my learning curve. I said, have a chair. I want to find out what went on here. And what he did, he had a 387. I mean, he was a bright man. He knew how to study. He came in and he knew he wanted to be a neurologist. So he took a biology major with the neurobiology option, which is fine. But what he basically did was he specialized as an undergrad. So he come in and he took the 151 introductory biology courses, and then he took all advanced courses in neuroscience because he wanted to be a neurologist, but all he knew about was the nervous system. And the MCAT, the DAT, whatever, doesn't focus only on the nervous system. And I told him, I said, you come back, you take physiology. It's a 400 level, 300 or 400 level course here to give you the breadth, know about the rest of the cells in the body besides neurons, okay? And yeah, you want to take some advanced courses too, but this is what I mean about breadth. You need to know, more than, you don't want to specialize too soon. So that's another story here. Timing of courses, as I say, sometimes I had a student one time who came in at the beginning of her sophomore year, and somebody had told her, well, wait and take biology as a junior. And I said, no way, because if you wait until your junior year to take introductory biology, when are you going to have time for physiology and cell biology and those 300, 400, and 500 level classes? The same thing, people come in and say that they're going to take it, but they haven't had physics yet. Well, you've got to get your physics in. Another thing that students don't think about is here, our physics is basically labeled a 100 or 200 level course. And some students come in and go, well, those are introductory courses. I can do those as freshmen. But what happens is almost all of my students take physics as a junior, and your competition is very experienced. If you're a freshman, a first-time freshman, competing with juniors who've been here for 6 semesters. This is why you talk to professors. This is why you get advising and mentoring, because there's just so much more that's true. And I keep saying that everything that's true is not on a website. So the fact that you haven't seen it doesn't mean it's not true. And even if you have heard something different, it doesn't mean it's possible. I have a rule that I tell students, you never accept the first 3 no answers. If you're trying to get something answered, and it's like, well, no, we can't do that. And then you talk to the person 1 seat up, and it's no, you can't do that. And then eventually you get to the 3rd no, and I say, if you get to the 3rd no, come see me. Maybe I'll get a no answer too. But the other thing I can do is pick up the phone and say, hi, this is Dr. Duello, and I'm advising so-and-so here. And I just was a little confused because I was told there's not tutorial help in your course. And the professor goes, yes, there is. And the student had gotten the information that there wasn't. So even when the website says do it this way, and even when you hit a wall or whatever, talk to somebody, there are lots of things that you can achieve through networking. Okay, so back to the GPA. Yes, of course, grades count. People ask about reviewing for the MCAT, or DAT, or GRE, or anything else. And this sounds glib, but the best advice I can give you is to learn it the first time. If you think that people come to me and say, is 6 weeks going to be enough for me to review for the admissions exam? Well, if it's truly a review and you've done well and you learned it the first time, then 6 weeks may be enough. But if you struggled and you really didn't know it, no, 6 is not, okay? So there's no one message that's going to be true for all the students. And this is why you can't fool the admissions committee. The admissions committee gets a sheet, and I'm sure it's the same every other medical school, dental school, and stuff. And what we get is a chart, and it's got freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and then post-bac, meaning after you've gotten your bachelor's degree. And it's science, non-science, and total, okay? So we're going to see, and you would hope that your science GPA is as high or not higher than the other one. Because if your grade point is high because of all the courses that you took only that weren't in science, then that's going to concern us. So you can't fool us because number one, we have this chart, and then the next page is your transcripts. And again, we can look at your transcripts with a great deal of care. We can see where you did an emphasis. So here you can see the total GPA may be a 3.1 in both of these cases, but here the non-science was carrying it, and here the science was carrying it. So the standard joke is, you can't take a bunch of basket weaving courses and think you can sneak it past the admissions committee, because that just won't work, and it won't happen. We put a great deal of hard work and time into reviewing these. I will send this out to you afterwards too. Not all students, especially when you first come in, know how the grading system. Students come to me, and early in my career I actually spent a lot of time helping people who didn't get admitted the first time. And I'd sit down and look at what you could do. And students would say, well, I'd like to bring my GPA up from a 2.8 to a 3.4. And the hard part of being a professor and an advisor is telling people sometimes bad news, but exactly what it's going to take. So I ask students to convince themselves. If you have a grade point and you want your grade point to be something higher, sit down and figure out how many credits of A you would have to get to do that. Now, I have had students who have actually had to repeat a lot of courses, and maybe it was going to take them 2-3 years, and I know students who have done it, and I know students who are health professionals now. But realize it feels like your grade point goes down a lot faster than it goes up, right? Okay, so if you want your grade point to go up, have a plan and realize that it's probably not realistic to say, well, if I get 3 semesters of 4-point, I'm going to have X. You may need to spread the courses out, whatever. Come talk to me, come talk to somebody. Okay, so I just want to put a clarification in Tier 2, is you can go to any website and you can probably find out what the mean GPA is for that professional school. And this is a couple years old, but it's all the same. It really doesn't matter. The mean, not the average, the mean science GPA is about a 3.7, as is the overall. And you can see actually that we do take some out-of-state students. We're actually regulated by the government, by the state, on how many out-of-state students we can take. And students can look down here and see what the average MCAT scores. And because we train you the way we do in high school and the way we emphasize numbers, it is so easy for you to walk away thinking, I don't care what she says. What's going to really matter is my GPA and my admissions score and nothing else. So say that this is a 3-point, that's a 4-point, and the mean right here is a 3.68, a mean. What does that mean? It means that there were some people who had 3.8s, 3.9s, and 4 points, and I would guess it looks like that. And there were a whole bunch of applicants who had something lower than a 3.7. And then I hear somebody, and actually it's probably more like that if I had to guess. Then I hear somebody say, well, I'm just really upset. My grade point's higher than theirs is, and I know they got in, and I didn't. So there must be something fishy, and why did they have an advantage? I want you to take home the idea, too, here, that there's a range of acceptable grade points. Again, I can resort to a story. A few years ago, a young man came in and said that he didn't know why he wasn't accepted into medical school. He had a 389. He had like a 36 total on his MCAT scores, which were great. Same thing, I said, please have a seat. I said, this is going to be about my learning curve. You know, why was the young man not admitted? And I looked down and I went through his application and I went through his essay, and the only thing he had was grades. And the next talk is going to be about everything else you need. I know of, not at Wisconsin, but I have known of a student with a 4-point who didn't get in. Because if you don't have the rest of the material, which we're going to talk about, to convince an admissions committee, then grades and admission scores alone will really not do it. That's what they call a holistic approach. That's what I had on the slide about what is your medical experience, what have you done, where do you come from, and your letters, okay? So when you hear that somebody with less than a 3.7 got in, this is why. Because you know what? There was somebody down here with a 3.3 or a 3.4. They spent 2 years in the Peace Corps. They cured cancer. They walk on water. You know, absolutely we want them in our class. And when we talk about the diversity of the class, it's diversity of experience. It's not just race, creed, and color. It's diversity of experience and of majors. Because you know when you're in a classroom, you learn so much from each other. And medical school, I can tell you firsthand, you know, is the students are like this. You learn so much by other people's examples. You know, the person who was in the Peace Corps speaks up, and you learn something entirely different. So that's what diversity is about. But this is why there's a range of acceptable GPAs. I have had plenty of students who came to me and said, you know, I have a 3.1 or I have a 3.2, and we sat down and we developed a plan for them to increase it. I have emails, bless her, that I got from somebody, a student had interviewed with a medical student at another university, and that medical student had actually worked with me at one point in time, and I had been her advisor. And she says, when you get back, she says, you thank Dr. Duello. She says, because I had an advisor who told me that I could never get into medical school. She was a 4th-year med student, okay? So lots of success stories there. You just need a plan. So what are some more of the myths here? I'm going to give you these. So the major, favorite major, that was wrong. Only biology, that was wrong. Double major, certificate, all of this doesn't matter. I've had a lot of students who thought, I think that they had to do a second major in a foreign language, Spanish. What do we value about the foreign language? Your ability to speak it, okay? I encourage students to go out and get certified, become a certified translator. That's a whole nother story. But again, if we see that you know the language, that you've worked at it in public settings and that, this is what we're going to value, not necessarily that you did the literature part of it. Physics with calc, if you love math, great. If you're not great at math, fine. The grade point issue, all of these. One medical student and an English teacher, good luck. You know, if that's going to be your approach, all I can say is good luck. But you're going to have a very restricted viewpoint. You know, if you need to take a light semester with heavy courses, it's much, much more important to get A's, dropping a class, etc. So one of the things that I was told early in my career, which I did not take to heart, was when your mind is tired, exercise your body. When your body is tired, exercise your mind. And instead, as an undergrad, I would sit down and go, oh, okay, chemistry was not my strong point. And I'd say, okay, I've got 6 hours of OChem to do tonight. And 6 hours was just crippling, right? You know, I tell students, go out and buy a kitchen timer and set it for 20 minutes. Tell yourself you have to work for 20 minutes to do it instead. I find this about writing. I can sit down at the computer and I'm really not in the mood, I'm really not ready to write. And I may sit there for 3 hours and not save a word that I used. If I go exercise, if I rest, if I do something else, I can come back and do the same amount of work in an hour and a half, okay? So it was always work hard, play hard. And instead, I did work hard, fall down. Okay. So one of the things that we're also going to look for going into the health professions is that you have balance in your life. So we're not going to reward that you're obsessive compulsive and a maniac, because you're going to have to take care of your life throughout your entire career. Thank you.